You are listening to the FeedBak
Podcast with my homie Back.
Welcome to the FeedBak Podcast, everybody. My name is Back. We got Miko in the house.
Hello, world.
We got Byron in the house.
What up, what up?
And Lane in the house.
Hi.
And this is a special show. I am so honored to be here. We're at City Hall, folks, and to talk with none other than our beloved mayor, Mr. Mayor Adler. Is it Mr. Mayor Adler?
Actually,
Mr. Mayor Adler?
Steve works.
Steve works too? Of course.
Steve.
Some mayor would be like, no, you call me Mayor de Blasio. Or whatever. Steve works too. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm excited. Thanks.
I know you're busy, and I know that people are pulling you left and right to do things and meeting after meetings and everything. So it really means a lot to us for you to take the time on a Saturday morning to talk with us.
Yeah, skipped cartoons this morning to come. Appreciate that.
These are the important personal sacrifices
Y'all remember,
for the city.
So before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Herd Presents. Located in the iconic Red River District, Empire Control Room and Garage has 3 stages, including a patio. So go to EmpireATX.com and check their lineup. They have great shows coming up. The Ohio players are coming at the end of the month. Yellow
Take your
Wolf,
parents.
The Brownout is performing with Jizza
Oh, yeah.
next month. So that's really exciting. So make sure you go to Empire ATX, use promo code FDBK for 10% off your tickets. So shout out to our friends over at Herd Presents. So Steve, it sounds weird to say Steve. I'm so used to Mayor Adler. Let's jump right into it. We want to get a little bit more on about your background and what brought you to Austin and becoming our mayor. So Washington D.C. That's where
I was born in the city. Not too many people actually born. People say they're born in Washington. They actually mean Maryland and Virginia,
right.
most of the time. But I was born in the city. And as I got older, we moved further out Connecticut Avenue. So I graduated high school in Maryland. Mm-hmm. Went to college in Princeton. And
We won't ask what year.
Good. A long time ago.
Did you know what you wanted to study at the time? Like, was there any inkling at getting into politics at all growing up, or? I got an undergraduate degree in a graduate school that they have there, which is the Woodrow Wilson School. It's kind of like the LBJ school. Right. So it was public and international affairs. Mm-hmm. But I never really thought about getting into politics. But obviously, I've always been, real intrigued by public policy, by people's lives and quality of life kinds of issues for people. So then I graduated from Princeton and decided that law school would be a good way to go, in part because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and law school seemed like you get to do, one of the hardest ones.
Lots of different things, but you can do lots of different things
with
that. So I came to Texas for law school because it was the cheapest law school in the country. It was ranked really high, and they gave me a scholarship, so I could afford law school here. So I came down here for that. Mm-hmm. Absent that, I wouldn't have come. I had no intention of staying in Texas or Austin.
What did you know about Austin at the time from Maryland? What was the?
I didn't know very much about it at all.
Were you expecting horses?
I was
Cowboys?
expecting horses and oil wells. And I had no idea what to expect. I had some buddies that I had grown up with back in D.C., and when I went off to college, they went off and joined the military, and they had arrived in Austin just before I came down. Okay. They met me at the airport. I hadn't seen them in years. Their hair was well past their waist by the time I caught up to them again in Austin, and they picked me up at the airport, took me back to their place in Hyde Park, where my first night in Austin was spent on the floor. But on the way, we stopped by Barton Springs to see that, and I in Barton Springs there within 45 minutes arriving, thinking this is a pretty cool place.
Was this summertime?
Yeah.
So yeah, you got exposed to that heat right away.
Yeah.
It's a good thing they took you to Barton Springs to cool off.
And you're like, that's
that
it.
part took getting used to.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Your
much.
blood has to thin out a little bit.
Yes, it does. I'm still not used to it. I'm born and raised in Texas.
Yeah.
And then you thought, that's it. Austin is where I want to be, where I want to stay.
Well, over time, over time, the thought of staying here was just so foreign to me that, there were a lot of things about the city that just began to feel right. It began to feel more like home. Barton Springs, it was a beautiful place. The hill country was beautiful. But a lot of it was the music. A lot of it was just the number of places you could go to listen to music, and it was so interwoven into the culture and who we were. So you go to law school, you finish your first year and your second year, and then you do these summer internships,
Right.
which are kind of like, you make good money so you can pay for the next year of school. But it's also a time to see what it's like to be a real lawyer, and it's kind of like an extended interview process. So you go do these internships with firms that you think you might want to work for. And my internships were with big DC law firms, because that's where I was. That's where I knew kind of
That's what was familiar
Reflexively
to you, yes.
is what I was familiar. It's where
Right.
it's where I was headed. But as I started spending time here, I got a kind of a learner's permit that you can get as a second-year law student, and I was trying cases in courtrooms. You can actually try a case so long as there's like a real lawyer that's standing nearby. So it's literally like a driver's
Interesting.
license permit, trying to learn out. I was sitting around listening to music and drinking beer at Armadillo, listening to Dana Cooper and Shake Russell.
Oh, you were immersed in the culture at that point.
And I thought, how can I leave here? I can't leave this. So I turned down those firms.
Wow.
And got a job with a little firm here in town, and that was it.
When you were in college, were you in a band, or did you play? You were like, I'm going to dedicate my life to helping others and getting more into the legal side of things.
I really like music. My father had an absolutely beautiful voice, and when he was young, he used to you would enter contests and things like that. My sister and brother inherited those voices and continue to sing with groups and things. I inherited my mother's kind of tone deafness. I can sing really well if I hit the first note right. And if I don't hit the first note right, then everybody's like in trouble.
Great. Stay tuned for the end of the show, folks. When
we have a live performance.
A little performance for us.
No.
There may or may not be dogs howling after that. We'll see.
But I play the piano and I play the spoon. So when I was growing up here, it seemed like everybody was in a band. I had a group of buddies, and at the end of every evening, it seemed the guitars would come out.
Right.
And everybody would start. We would just start
Little jam session.
singing,
Yeah.
and I would break out the spoons.
Steve with the spoons. So why so you graduate from UT Law School, and then is that when you formed your legal firm?
I started off with another firm
Right.
for the first year, but then had some really lucky breaks, and was able to kind of venture out on my own. And I did a lot of civil rights law. So a lot of it was employment discrimination law. And I tried some cases in federal court. I actually tried a case against the city of Austin, dealing with a police incident. But a lot of employment stuff. Most of it was sexual harassment, discrimination cases. The first time I met Kirk Watson, who's now the state senator, we were baby lawyers at the same time. And one of his very first trials was one of my first cases. Was one of my first cases. We found ourselves on opposite
how interesting.
sides of a case when we were both just baby lawyers. And
Yeah, I want to know who won that case.
well, those things are so determined by the facts. I actually won that case.
Hey. Point for Steve, everybody.
He, Kirk was laden with bad facts. So I did that, and then over time also started doing real estate trial work as well. The latter paid a lot more than the former. The real estate litigation paid more than the civil rights work, and that practice then started to grow. And quite frankly, that the growth of that practice put me and Diane in the position where we could spend more time on the civil rights kinds of issues, education issues. So we did a lot of nonprofit work. Mm-hmm. So on the civil rights side, I was one of the folks that took the Anti-Defamation League. We helped create the No Place for Hate program. Mm-hmm. That's now in schools all over Central Texas, and those kinds of things. A lot of education groups like Breakthrough and Jen Austin for middle school girls, and that's it.
It seems that your track record is really about fighting for the little guy, whether it's discrimination cases, sexual harassment, as you said, or people who are being pushed out of their properties because some corporation or the government is trying to acquire that property. Where does that come from? Is that something that you're passionate about growing up, or what does that passion for fighting for the little guy come from?
I think it begins with your parents. It begins with the values that they had. My father never went to college. Was a film editor for CBS. Mm-hmm. So I was there when Dan Rather arrived as a pup reporter from Texas. Mm-hmm. I can remember watching the Walter Cronkite Evening News being broadcast live from D.C. He usually did it out of New York, but occasionally he would come down to D.C. to do it. So I grew up in and around where your local news is international news, because you're growing up in Washington, D.C. Right. And because of my father's work, I got to see a lot of it, and it was something we talked about a lot because it was part of his everyday life. So it became part of ours too. Mm-hmm. And you know the people. You're in a city and somebody who's working on the Capitol, or is the son or daughter of a congressman or a federal official, or one of the nonprofit organizations or lobby organizations that's constantly pushing on the environment or on civil rights or on whatever. Mm-hmm. So it becomes part of you grow up in that environment. So I was pretty steeped in it. When I went to Princeton and was able to go there because at the last minute they came through with a scholarship for me to be able to go. Otherwise, I was either going to go to the State University or I would have been at the Naval Academy because, again, that was free. But that was a very different world for me to go to college. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was suddenly seeing things that I had not seen before. And was seeing a perspective on things that I hadn't seen before. And quite frankly, that probably reinforced the kinds of things that I had grown up with. Mm-hmm.
It's very same passions, right?
Same passion. I had a wider view. I began to see what real power was and where that came from and how you could build that or how you could develop that or gain that in places where that didn't otherwise exist. So that was a neat thing. That then became part of the training. Part of it is the luck of who it is that you end up spending your time with. I just happened in high school and in college to befriend people who were really passionate and great leaders and on causes, and you kind of get sucked up into their universe, and that becomes part of how you think or how you got trained or what you're sensitive to.
So what was the the tilt in your head when you decided to jump into politics?
But that didn't come till like way later. I was involved in politics in terms of supporting candidates or supporting causes. I was early in on President Obama's campaign. I was on his finance committee. So I did those kinds of things, mostly at the federal and at the state level. One of my closest friends from law school ended up becoming the state senator from El Paso. So I helped him get elected in El Paso because he's my buddy. And then when he actually got elected, I helped him up at the Capitol set up his office. I was his chief of staff and general counsel. So I would kind of take leave of absence from my law firm for that 6 month period of time for the session. I would do a lot of work at night. So I would, Elliot stayed at my home, senator, and I would get up with him at 7. We'd go do breakfast, meetings. I would spend all day, and then at 7, 8 o'clock at night, I would send him off to do evening work as a senator, and then I would do law work until midnight, and then I'd get back up at 7 with him in the morning. But it was fascinating to have that view in that 6 month period of time during session, and then work outside of session so that you could see politics and policy being made at that level. But I never really thought about me doing it.
Right.
Until in Austin, we changed the form of government. We went to the 10-1 system.
Right.
We went to a district system. And frankly, as I looked at, and as a group of us looked at other cities and counties that had transitioned into single-member district form of government, while theoretically it's a really good idea as a practical matter, in most of the cases I looked at, it ran into real problems because it really quickly devolved into kind of a ward politic thing. People were finally able to deliver to their district something that the district had been wanting for years and could never get. And you had district reps that were then trading things off with one another. I'll vote for your thing if you vote for my thing. And if we get 6 people ready to vote for everybody else's thing, we can each get our thing. And you're being guided at that point not by what might be in the best interest of the city generally. And you need a balance of these things. So when the form of government changed, it became, we thought, real important to have somebody coming in as mayor in that new system that would prioritize trying to make the system work well, kind of the trustee for the rest of us of trying to make help make a system, because it's going to be brand new. Everything you do is going to be brand new. You'll be institutionalizing brand new things. It's best to start it off right and to help a group work together. So we went out and tried to recruit somebody to run for mayor. Thought it needed to be somebody that was new because the system was new.
Right, fresh perspective.
Perspective. Even though there were good incumbents that were running, really good people, the view was we just needed this is a new perspective on this. And everybody we went to run that we thought would have been real good said no. So eventually we kind of locked ourselves in the room and said, look, one of us needs to stop what we're doing and go do this. And Diane and I were in a position to be able to do it. I drew kind of the short straw. And the next thing you know, I'm mayor.
Wow. Were you shocked when you took office and you're like, oh, now I got all this pressure, and were you nervous?
Well, I've been in a lot of situations where there was a lot of pressure. So the pressure didn't get to me. The incoming volume was just absolutely overwhelming. And everything about this job is built to make you reactive in this job. You could spend 48 hours a day doing nothing but reacting to what comes at you.
Responding.
Right.
Constituent stuff. We could spend all our time doing nothing but handling constituent help calls. And we're able to help most of those people that call in, but you can't spend all of your time just doing that. And on any given Monday, there's a whole pile of things that hit the council member desks that somebody's been working on for 3 months or 6 months or 3 years. And now it's gotten to the point where something has to happen. It wasn't able to get resolved at a lower level. And you have to step in and try to mediate those situations or decide right policy. You could spend 48 hours a day, recognizing there's only 24. You could spend 48 hours a day doing nothing but that. But you can't.
Right.
But all of that is all reactive. What you really want to do is step out and do stuff that is affirmative. You want about affordability in the city. You want to step up and do something affirmative about trying to preserve and build a music industry and vertical in the city. And it's so hard to create the time and the dynamic to be able to do that. That part of the job surprised me. But I'm older now and been here for a long time. So I'll do this for however long I'm gifted with the chance to do this. Then I'll go do something else. I don't get too caught up in all the stuff that surrounds us.
One thing I really appreciate about you is that you're very accessible. And there are mayors out there, I'm sure, like if you want to get in front of the mayor of LA or the mayor of another big city, is like you have to go through so much. And then when he walks around, there's always a bunch of motorcade and bodyguards and all that, but you can catch Steve at Trace having brunch or at a show somewhere. That I think that's being visible, and people are like, oh, it's not this guy in this high golden tower just dictating things. He's actually out here with us, and I think that goes a long way. And that's great. I love that part. I'm sure you get that all the time.
Well, thanks. I mean, this is my city too, right? So
Right.
Yeah, you got to be out there.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
We did a 3-part series actually last year about saving Austin music. I know that's a topic that's dear to your heart. And this is actually like a year ago is when the recommendation to the omnibus came out, and I want to get a little update on what's happening and where we are, and then talk about agent of change and all the things that are happening. So can you give us a quick update on what's going on with the omnibus right now?
Sure. The omnibus at a really high level, I think you could break it into 2 categories. One is those things that are directed mostly to music and creatives, with things that are special to music and creativity in the city. And then the second is just general affordability issues that hit all of us in the city, generally, whether you're a musician or not.
Right.
So the if we're actually going to be able to preserve the music necessary to preserving the spirit and soul of the city, you have to hit on both of those frames, and we're trying to work on both of them.
Right.
So on the stuff that's specific to music and creativity, we talked in that omnibus deal about doing those things that would help strengthen and preserve the music ecosystem and industry, so that you could be playing in a garage at 16 and in clubs at 22. But at 45, you could still be in the music industry and supporting a family at that point.
It could be a career.
How do you do that? How do you go from here to there? And how do you strengthen it at each stage of that, the economic returns, so as to build real sustainability? So we're working on things like agent of change. I had hoped that we would have passed that resolution in June before we took a break. Right. It wasn't quite baked enough to be able to do that. But the concept that we're pushing on that, where if you move into an area with a home or a hotel and it's a music area, you got to know you're moving into a music area, and if the club's going to meet the sound standards that we have in the city, then if you move in there, make sure that that's something that you want to be around, because it's already there. You can't come in, try to close things down. Same for music clubs. If you go into an area that's a residential area, you have to recognize you're moving into a system that already exists. And I think that's an important thing to do. associated with that concept is the pilot program that grew out of the omnibus that we're running right now at Red River and Ninth, to find how it is that we can have both clubs and residents and hotels all coexisting, and not only just coexisting, but coexisting in a way that will let us strengthen the music. So, the best times to be making money in a club is 10 till whenever you close. You have a finite period of time. If we could add another 30 minutes to that, another hour to that, you could be adding 25-30% more potentially in revenue. I mean, that would make a huge difference in terms of the sustainability of the industry. So we're piloting and testing that right now, helping to bring in new technologies that exist now that are just amazing in terms of sound direction and capture, and so that you don't impact the experience of being in the club. But if you're down the street, you don't necessarily have to share in that experience if that's not something that you wanted to do, and that's going really well. And I think because of those kinds of conversations, we're seeing early indications that some of the disputes between clubs and the hotels might actually be finding ways to resolve themselves, short of litigation. And so that's encouraging. We're recognizing that we're losing live music venues in this city because you can't pour enough beer between 10 and 1 to pay the rent as rents are going up in these locations. So how do you preserve those? And teaming now with, we won the national competition to get a new technology disruptor in the bond field, the same way we've seen disruptors in transportation and disruptors in contact lenses and disruptors in anything. The bond disruptor has kind of endorsed and come into Austin, and together we're trying to set up the strike fund for music venues so that we can actually create a product where everybody in this city can actually invest in preserving in perpetuity some of the iconic music venues that we have in the city, building off the work of people like Gary Keller, who just came in and saved Saxon, and building off that to help empower that kind of work and let it spread to other venues.
But beyond that, I mean, the city's growing at a rate that's unimaginable. So, I mean, I've been here 19 years, and within the past 5 years, it seems like the city just doubled out of nowhere. But what do you think is the missing link? Is it beyond saving the venues and helping musicians find places to play at? People will come in here, and if they find out that Austin is the live music capital of the world, we have ACL, we're the home of South by Southwest, and all these great venues and these great festivals. But what can we do to actually push that message forward to people who come in here? Because it's not like it used to be where you can tell someone, hey, just walk up and down 6th Street, then you'll figure it out. You'll find music anywhere you walk. So what is that message, and what is the what is the campaign that we can push out to tell people that, hey, we're the music capital of the world, and this is what that means?
Well, there's both a branding question on that and just a general, how does the city survive the growth kind of question associated with that. The Austin, I think, does a fairly decent job of branding itself, where people understand the importance of music to us. South by Southwest now has reach in the country, and internationally, ACL does. I think we are seen that way. We have to preserve it. I mean, the real risk for this community is that with the affordability issues, we're no longer the live music capital of the world because live musicians can't afford to live here,
right?
Or we don't have the clubs. Without those, we're no longer the live music capital of the world. So how do you sustain that when a city's growing? And the first impulse is to say, well, let's just stop it growing, man. We have like enough people here.
Oh,
Austin's full.
Ain't no stopping it. You see all those cranes? Ain't no stopping it.
And there is no stopping that. That's nothing. That's nothing we can do.
Right.
The growth is going to happen. There's only one way to stop this city from growing, and that's to make it an undesirable place to be. You know, and I don't want to be the mayor who successfully makes Austin an undesirable place to be. So people are going to come. So the question is, how do we manage that? What do you do when that growth is coming? You know, you look at a city like San Francisco, wonderful city, great things happening, progressive place.
Right.
The median home price in San Francisco right now, north of $1,150,000.
Okay, we're not there yet. Everybody relax.
No, we're not there. But look at cities like Seattle and Boston. Those are cities that are also really cool places. Mm-hmm. They looked at San Francisco. They said, not us.
Right.
Not us. We're going to be smarter and wiser. We're going to learn from what they did in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And like a tractor beam, they're being pulled in the same place. The median home price now in Seattle and Boston, north of $650,000. So here we are in Austin. Now we get to watch San Francisco and Boston and Seattle. Uh-huh. And we say, what do we have to do that, in fact, is different? There's not a city in the world that has been able to look at gentrification issues and affordability issues and figure out what you do. More people move into town. People are going to want to live close to downtown. So now you have, instead of 5 people bidding on every house that comes up, now you have 10 people or 15 people or whatever the number is. Mm-hmm. As soon as you have more people that are bidding on limited supply, the prices are going to continue going up.
Right.
That's why housing prices in the city are going up 3.5 times faster than incomes. And when housing prices start going up that much faster than incomes, you're going to be pricing people out of the city. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you do to combat that? Now, there are tools that cities all across the country have that we don't have because our state legislature doesn't want to give cities the tools to actually be able to fight that.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Well, like the linkage fee. Even just a concept that we said 8 months ago, let's sit down and talk about how we can spread across a really, really wide base. The people that we're all contributing to this growth.
Right.
It's creating this problem. If we make the base wide enough, we can raise some funds without anybody really feeling it. And let's do it in a constructive way. Just talking about the concept. The legislature this past 6 months passed a new law that makes it illegal for a city to do that. And you go, wait a second, we hadn't even finished the concept yet. But the legislature took that away. Other cities can do things like inclusionary zoning, which is to say, if you come in, if your property, you zone an area multifamily, but to build in that multifamily area, you have to build 10% of the units at an affordable rate. It's just part of the deal. Mm-hmm. You can't do that in Texas because the legislature has taken that away. Rent controls that you have in some cities, the legislature's taken away the right
That's
to
just
be
frustrating. We should be, Austin is an island in Texas, really.
But we do have some tools.
Okay.
And we're creating new tools. And so by no means are we like throwing in the towel. This is an innovative, creative city, and we just need to be innovative and creative. And we are. And we're trying new things. The Code Next process that we're going through now is one way for us to increase supply in the city so that we can start meeting the demand. But it's also an opportunity for us to be able to use the tools that we do have to start creating pockets and enclaves of affordability throughout the city so that we have mixed income uses all over the city. So we are fighting back.
So, we do have a lot of resources. We have 100+ music-related nonprofits, for example, which I think is a lot, maybe too many. Maybe they should, merge or something because it becomes overwhelming and hard to navigate. There's all these programs going on. You have ASAP that just launched recently, correct? You have the pilot program, you have the Music Foundation, you have Black Fret, and all these people fighting the same fight. We're all trying to preserve Austin as a live music capital of the world. We're doing the podcast. It's been 3 years we've been doing this, and the what I noticed during the omnibus, those town hall meetings that we did for like 3 months or so, is that there was a lot of people doing things, but they were not aware of who else was doing what. And the overall message that I got out of it was, oh, the city's trying to move in the right direction. That's great. And we all support it, but we can't wait for the city to do something. And that might not even be part of what your responsibility is as a city. But we need to keep grinding and collaborate more and not necessarily rely on the city as much, but ask for their support. Is that something that
resonates with me on two different levels? The first one is that you're absolutely right. We have tons of nonprofits and organizations to help people. In fact, my understanding is that there are more nonprofits per capita in Austin, Texas, than any other city in the country.
Austin, fill in the blank.
We just have we have
most nonprofits and most bars per capita.
Yeah, right.
And maybe there's a relationship between those two.
Just saying.
So the thought of really getting to the place where you build the efficiencies and we really pull people together, so we're not duplicating services, and so that any individual doesn't have 100 different choices of which you can only really know about 8 of them, which means there's 92 that are out there that might be able to help him, but he doesn't ever know about it. To actually get it to a place where everybody knows where to go and people aren't doing duplicated services and resources are being used most efficiently is something that we have now set up here just recently in the workforce development community, job training. We pulled everybody in the room and we said, hey, let's pick 3 goals and then let's figure out how as a collective we go after those 3 goals. Give me one benchmark that in 3 years we can measure how we're successful or not. And now let's have everybody working against that benchmark. We're about to do the same thing in the homelessness area with a lot of service providers. We have to do the same thing in the music industry too. So I think you're dead on right about that, because I think we could be more efficient and be more sustainable and actually drive the goals and the metrics better than we do. The second thing is that, before I got elected to mayor, I was on a lot of nonprofits and a lot of boards. And we did as much as we could in the community. And my perception was always that we were doing really good work to help support what it is that the government did. But now I'm sitting in this chair and I'm looking out at what everybody does in the community, and I realize I had it backwards. I mean, really what's happening in this community is helping people that's happening outside of governments. And government at best fills in the gaps between what it is that the community is doing. So your second point, I think, is also right too. You can't wait for the government to do these things. The resources don't exist in the government to be able to do all the things that we need to do, which is why we have to be creative and innovative. We have to figure out what are the formulas that actually work. The strike fund, to be able to raise private money, to be able to not only just raise private money, but not just as a gift, but to be able to give people a little bit of a return on an investment will help us begin to compete. And it's those kinds of ideas we're testing now.
So, here's an idea, and I threw that out at Gavin and Jennifer and Don last year when I did the podcast here. Look at the ACVB, which pretty much owns the moniker, right? Live Music Capital of the World. Like they're in charge of the tourism. When people come to Austin, whether you're a business and you're looking for hotels, looking to see what's happening, what are some of the iconic music venues, and here's some links to KUTX, and here's some links to some other organizations. But there are a separate entity from the government. They have their own team, they have their own marketing team, they have their own financing, I would assume, and they take in money from the hotel occupancy tax, correct?
Yes.
So, but because they're their own entity, they have more flexibility on how to operate. So would it make sense to have something similar to that, but just in charge of music, where it takes things, off your hands and off things that still have to go through city council, of course, but at least marketing music, the right way, and just focusing on that, whether exporting our artists outside of Austin, working with businesses. We have Google, we have Microsoft, we have Facebook. So there's a lot of players, and a lot of people operating in silos. And when we need collaboration, it seems that there's so much going on that it's overwhelming. And we're looking for, okay, who can we look up to that can help us connect the dots?
I think that makes really good sense.
And good sense today.
No. And it's something I hope that we actually fund here before the year's over.
Really?
So one of the debates that we have in this community right now is whether or not to expand the convention center. Mm-hmm. People are on all sides of that issue. Mm-hmm. My concerns with expanding convention center is that we create another kind of dead space in downtown. Mm-hmm. The ground floor of the convention center right now, you don't have a lot of restaurants or retail, so it's kind of dead area for pedestrians in that area. The second concern is that when you do an expansion, you can screw up the grid system of roads because you place things on multiple blocks. Mm-hmm. And the last concern I have is that we're losing the ad valorem tax revenue that comes from the height, being able to put towers on that property. And we need that ad valorem tax revenue in order to be able to fund, pocket parks throughout the city or clinics throughout the city, the things we use the general fund for. So the convention center now has come back and said, okay, how about a design where the bottom two floors are retail, restaurant, pedestrian space. And the convention center, in essence, floats in floors 3 through 7. And then we have on top of that towers that get built up so that you still have the private ad valorem tax residence use. Well, it could be office buildings or whatever it is that generates property tax revenue for the city to be able to spend. Well, that hits my concerns with the convention center. But then I said, if we're actually going to do that, how do we use the convention center as a tool to be able to raise funding that we wouldn't otherwise be able to raise if we didn't do a convention center? So a convention center on its own, brings in money for hotels, for people who run restaurants, for 100,000 people that are related to that work. But how can we use it to actually generate an income stream to be able to finish out the phase 2 and 3 of the MAC, for example? Or how do we raise the money to be able to fund on several $1 million of income every year to be put not to music, not the cultural arts music, not the nonprofit music, which we're already funding, but to create a separate income stream to actually work on the music industry.
I'm gonna work with you.
And that's the idea. In fact, that's the idea that we've been talking about, and just came out from a task force looking at the hot tax. I'm going to post something here in the next few days publicly on the bulletin board with the council, where I'm going to be looking at all the different funding streams, all the different projects, and I'm going to put them all in one page and say, no, we could actually do this. We could deliver improving 6th Street. We could improve doing something in the entertainment district at 9th and Red River. We could actually fund preservation downtown. We do something with the Palm School. We can bring online the Waller Creek Linear Park. That would be something for the entire city to be able to use. Create another venue, by the way, for music performance in the city, where we could do all that right now. And one big component of it, I think, is what you're talking about.
Wow.
You just ruined us. He's gonna be talking about that for the next couple months.
Yeah, I've been talking about it for a year. Actually, I've been talking about it for a year because I told Gavin about it, and he was like, "Yeah, this is a great idea. We'll explore whatever." And I'm glad to see there's something happening in that direction. That was just, I saw the ACVB and I thought it was a great model. And why not have something like that just for music that takes care of the venues, the artists, the creative spaces, and so on?
Well, a lot of times people have really good ideas, but there'll be no funding to back it up, so it doesn't move.
Right.
I'm trying now to help develop the income stream. So now we can say, okay, if we had an income stream that was over $3 million a year, now what is the best structure to be built around? So be part of that discussion, because I'm going to try and help make the money available, and then the community has to decide, okay, what structure do we use to use that money?
Right.
Well, when you have that meeting, let me know.
The whole community will know.
And he's gonna, when he's here, he's gonna come in with a sandwich from Slab. Why don't you go and talk about that?
So this episode is also brought to you by Slab Barbecue. You ever had Slab Barbecue?
I have not.
Oh, you have to try it.
Yeah.
It's 2 locations.
Okay.
One on 183 and Burning Road next to Sherlock's, and a new location at Oak Hill at the Y. And great barbecue. They have a sandwich called the Notorious PIG with pulled pork, topped with mustard, coleslaw, backyard red, and they have one called the Dunk, which is all their meats and all their sauces. It's 1 pound of meat. Like, don't take any sides with that kind of sandwich,
wow.
but it's good.
Yum.
So they do delivery, pickup, catering as well. Treat yourself with some dope barbecue. Mention the FeedBak at checkout for 10% off your meal.
Make sure when you go there, don't plan a lot afterwards, because I almost always get the itis afterwards. So
Yeah, don't go there for lunch, because if you have a Dunk for lunch, you're done. You're not gonna get anything done for the rest of the day. It's like that, but it's really, really good, good barbecue. So shout out to our friends over at Slab. I want to, in the same vein as what we've been talking about, Austin is growing. It's a fact. When you see all these lists that said, best city for fill in the blank. Quality of life, for food, for music, for education,
Tacos.
for healthy
Tacos.
living. Yeah, tacos. We're going to get him started on tacos?
Bring back the war with San Antonio.
Yeah, right? But it seems that, Austin has an identity crisis in a sense that it wants to remain this hip town, young and dynamic and, with the music, and you can come here with a guitar and a dream and make it happen. And in the meantime, there's all this money coming in, and the city's growing at a really fast rate, and it's turning into a bigger city. Now it's not Austin anymore. It's Georgetown, Pflugerville, Round Rock, Austin, San Marcos, all the way down almost to San Antonio. So how do you reconcile the two? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would begin with saying that the one constant in Austin for the 40 years that I have been here has been change. Change is not bad. I mean, we just want to change in a way that is Austin. So on the one hand, I lament the fact that the armadillo isn't here.
Right.
I lament the fact that the original Liberty Lunch is not here. And they leave, and you look at that and you go, well, we lost a little piece of Austin.
right.
But at the same time, we have the Alamo Draft House. Now that feels like Austin a lot.
And we export that culture out across.
And
the
we
world.
export, but that was not here. That is part of the change. So when I look at this city, I still love this city right now. There are things about this city that I think that I love. And not all of them were here 40 years ago.
Right.
So we continue to grow, and we evolve, and we change. We just have to make sure that we change in a way that preserves what's special about the spirit and soul here, which means that we have to figure out how to do this in a way that preserves diversity, that preserves access for people and opportunity for people. And I think that if we're able to do that, then we'll change in the way it is that we're supposed to. San Francisco is a great city, but when you lost the middle class in San Francisco, which doesn't exist now, you're either really wealthy to live there or you're subsidized to live there. There's nothing in the middle. You become a city that is no longer a producer of art. You live in a city that is a consumer of art. And as soon as that happens, then you start having just national and regional music and shows and things that are coming in, because you're not making it anymore. You're just you're consuming it, and that we have to hold on to. Austin is where good ideas become real, that we can send out. It is the place where we create art, and that's what we need to fight for. And I think we can do that. In fact, I think the very money that's coming in that is and making values go up as the market grows, as more and more people want to come here. It is exactly that same resource that will enable us to be able to preserve pockets of mixed income opportunity. Because that costs money to do. You have to be able to funnel it and channel it and capture it.
But can we go to Facebook or Apple and say, hey, you're part of this city, and the price to pay to be part of the city is you have to contribute to what we have going on. You can't just show up and be like, oh, we're going to install a campus. Yeah, I bring a lot of jobs, which is great. But there are ways that you can help as an international business to make sure that, yeah, you came here for a reason, and this is who we are, and we want to preserve that. And here's how you can contribute to that culture. Is that something that's happening, or?
Absolutely. It is something that is important to happen. And even with some of the companies you mentioned, it is happening where they give back to the community. But we live in Texas. So
forget about that sometimes.
That's the only thing wrong with Austin is it's in Texas.
Yeah, it's just Texas, man.
So there's a limit to what we can force any company to do. But we can control what we do. Mm-hmm. So an incentive program. City has incentive programs where we can give incentives to companies so that they locate here or build here. We could target that. We could say, something, we're going to do incentives because it's an important tool for us to have. But we're going to use these incentives. We're going to invest in companies that actually create middle-income jobs in our city. Or we're going to invest in companies that are willing to train the people who live here for middle-income jobs. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is what we should be doing. We should be taking the tools we do have and channeling them and directing them back to the outcomes that we want, and in order to be able to preserve diversity and opportunity in our city. And we do have a lot of the corporate entities that voluntarily do it. But we have to be more focused as a government to make sure that everything that we do has that frame and filter in the back of our minds. We created an equity office in the city. It's the first time we've done that. We've done that in the last year. It's just building out now, so that there's somebody in city government who wakes up every morning, goes to sleep every night, where that is the sole thing they are focused on and looking at everything the city does. Mm-hmm. Now, equity ought to be part of what everybody does in the city all of the time. That said, if you're in charge of public works, you wake up in the morning, you go to sleep at night, you're thinking about the projects you have to complete, right? So while you should be thinking about equity, it's really not the first and last thing you're going to think about. But now we have a department in the city that looks at everything that's happening in the city, and that's the only thing that they look at. So you need to take the tools you have and be very deliberate and focused about maintaining and preserving and building equity in the city. That's why we did the task force on institutional racism and systemic inequities, because you have a system that's historically not designed to end up with that in that place. Mm-hmm. So we just have to be deliberate.
Let's have Facebook fund that music entity thing.
Right.
That's an idea.
Yeah, I think you make a good point back, and you as well, Steve, that a lot of companies move here because of the culture and because it's cool. When you get here, it's easy to recruit employees because they want to move to Austin. It's a very hip city, still affordable-ish compared to San Francisco and other contemporaries of it. But that very same culture they come here for, they raise the stakes of prices that it actually pushes that culture out, right? So a balance of that. And so you think this equity office is part of going to help look at some of those companies moving in and what the city's direction, providing incentives, and provide some sort of direction on that, on how they can assist. With that in mind, what do you see that happening maybe like a year or two? Like, now that it's brand new, what do you see? Where do you see it impacting in a year or two or three down the line?
I think the first thing it's going to create is kind of an equity tool. So it's going to be a way for every department and every employee to be able to self-evaluate what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a deliberate process to force people to go through the exercise that you hope eventually we will drive by just culture and intuition and non-intention. It'll just happen. But until we get to that place, it's kind of like the pilot, who probably knows how to start the airplane, but actually has a checklist, and they go through each thing to make sure they don't miss a step. That's kind of what the equity tool is, and we want to develop that and then have everybody in the city using that tool. On the incentive issue, the Economic Development Department of the city is actually holding public hearings right now to design that, and in the next couple months, they're going to come back to the council to say, okay, you want us to grade incentives differently? You want us to do a different metric that drives these other things that we need? We're going to get that back here in the next 2-3 months, I think, because I want us to move forward on that. So we are pedaling as fast as we can, and
juggling quite a bit at the same time.
Yeah. So to go back to that, I think that Austin is great at importing things. We bring the tech companies. We bring people during South by. We bring people during ACL. But is there a sense of Austin is too Austin, in a sense that we don't export as much. So like if you're an artist, if you don't get out of Austin, then you're gonna have a hard time because of all the issues we just talked about. If you're a startup and you're trying to build something here at a Capital Factory or any of those incubators here in town, if you don't take that somewhere else, whether it's California or even the East Coast, then it's not going to work. Do you think Austin is too Austin sometimes, and it needs to
we're in our own bubble too much?
Yeah.
Well, there's no question, but that we need to be exporting more. We need to, because that builds opportunities for people who are here. It builds opportunities for more jobs. It helps people be able to sustain their businesses and their careers. So we need to do that. I've been making multiple international trips with an eye to doing that. I've now spent time in England and Dublin and in that part of the world. Last summer I was in Asia and in China and Singapore and Korea, among other countries in that area. I've been down in Mexico, multiple cities, trying to increase the international flights that we have as a city. I've met with Alibaba in China and said, hey, let's have like some Austin focus here, but let's put some of Austin out on your platform. I met with them multiple times, and we were the second city they went to in the country, where we had some startups in the area able to pitch on Alibaba to what, they have 400 million people or something on that platform. So that is top of mind to me. Even at all different scales. Just a few days ago, I was with the winners or the 6 local artists that were picked for the AT6 effort. Those are Austin ambassadors. You're taking 6 musicians or groups and helping send them out to communities outside of Austin so that they can build that base and enter into contracts outside of the city. Our economic development department was holds now seminars and meetings and classes with small businesses in the city about how you build out to international markets. So you're absolutely right. I mean, as we grow as a city, if we're going to be able to sustain the diversity in the city, it's going to require us to be better
at getting
outside the city.
I mean, case in point, I know the Kimpton Hotel, the Van Zandt right here, like they took KP and Boom Boom to Hawaii. Body Rock is going on tour with the hotel throughout July to throw events around the country. So it's things. I knew about the AT6, the 6 bands that get to travel and play out, but we all want to see more of that. I mean, you look at Gary Clark Jr., who's been born and raised here, and he just recently he's international star, and you're like, well, he had to get out for that to happen, and even more for artists than anything else. So
now remember too, that's how South by started, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
30 years ago, South by was about taking really, really good local artists and saying, how is it that you get out to the region or get out to the nation? So it was like a dating service, right? It was to let artists here locally meet the distribution chains and the investors that would provide the capital for them to be able to reach out. And so that is a constant deal, but more important now than ever before.
South by was the original music Tinder. Swipe right if you like this artist, left if you don't.
Right?
Well, once the whatever we give the name to, whatever the name is going to be for that music organization, we'll take care of that, I guess. I'll switch to a little politics. I know there's a big beef going on, I guess, between you and Governor Abbott over sanctuary cities. It is beef, right? At this point, it is.
Where's the beef?
Where's the beef?
Well, here's my perspective on that. I don't understand it. Cities, I'm really proud to be part of the city, and I'm proud to be part of the city in part because our unemployment rate is a full point lower than it is around the state. We're the safest big city in the state. We have way more than our fair share of the patents and the venture capital. We're doing something right in this city. Cities are not bubbles to protect the past. Cities are the incubators of innovation. We are forward looking, where we create the jobs and for the state. We are the economic engines for the state. I'm a really proud Texan, and I would want my city to be able to share and participate in helping to make this state strong. And part of that, I think, requires cities to be different. I mean, Austin is different than Houston, different than Dallas, different from San Antonio, and that difference, I think, is really good. In a cyclical market, there'll be some cities that are doing better at certain times than others. When the energy market goes low, Houston's going to suffer. We need other cities that are not on that cycle that'll help. When the financial market goes low, Dallas isn't going to be able to carry us. The others are going to have to step in. When medical or tourism goes low, we're going to help San Antonio. I mean, every city's it's a diversified portfolio of cities that this state should be celebrating. And I don't understand why it is that with cities being such an incubator of what is Texas' future, the way that we keep this state strong and preserve what it is special about being a Texan, why would we be in this? To me, obviously we're caught in a rhetorical, political debate that seems to be something happening in the Republican Party that the rest of the state has to suffer through, and it's really unfortunate because it is not in the best interest of this state. This city and the other cities have wonderful things to be sharing and helping to make our state strong. So I don't understand it. I don't understand the bathroom bill. That seems to be such a self-inflicted wound. Who
cares at the end of the day?
with all the police chiefs and so many of them in the coming in and saying, don't do Senate Bill 4, it'll make us less safe, not more safe. I don't understand why we end up doing that. I look at the legislature and I think what everybody wants the legislature to do is to help with property taxes. Because property taxes are going up, it's making people lose their homes and move away. 75% of the property tax increase that people are feeling in Austin is directly because of the state legislature's failure to fix the school finance system. It's not city taxes, not county taxes. It's the school taxes. 75% of the increase we have been feeling is because the legislature won't fix the school finance system, and now they're spending their time on trees. I don't understand if they would just spend
special session
a special session on trees. Why won't they do the one thing that everybody wants them to do? That's
we
what
need to
they
get
should
them
do.
out, change them or something.
One of my big things when it came to big topics here is ride sharing. We did a whole episode last year when Uber and Lyft left, the vote that happened. And, I was conflicted when the state legislature recently passed a law that basically overrode any local municipal laws about ride sharing. And on one side, I was glad to have Lyft back. I take Lyft a lot. On the other side, I didn't really like the fact that you've said it multiple times throughout this interview, the state overriding what the city's doing, right? It was just another example of them taking away that power. Any thoughts on that, even particularly around ride sharing and that aspect of it and what happened there?
Yeah, well, one, I like ride sharing. I was an early adopter of ride sharing, and it quickly became a real integral part of my life. One of the things that I was not successful in being able to do as mayor of the city was trying to head off that dispute a year and a half ago when it arose. I had some people in my council all the way this way and some people in my council all the way the other way. And I wanted us to find a solution that wouldn't have had to have anybody leave town, but would have been able to give people in the community choices. And we came so close to getting it done. And what really pissed me off back then is that it was the companies that wouldn't hang long enough for us to fix that because they thought they could just put it to an election and win a vote. And I sat with them and I said, don't do that. We don't need to go there. We can actually work this out. I mean, this is not a city that's trying to impose 19th century regulations on a new industry. This is like one of the most creative, innovative places. Let's figure out what the intersection is of safety interests or choice interests. We can do this, and that can be a model you can take to the rest of the world. But they were so sure they could win the election, they put it to a vote. Well, as soon as they did that, then I was stopped out. Right. At that point, everything now is set in motion. I can't talk to them because we have to have the election, and nothing we can do could pull down the election. The election turned out just the way that I thought that it would. I knew they were going to lose. Not because people didn't like Uber and Lyft. There were a lot of people who voted against Uber and Lyft who liked Uber and Lyft. But they said to what you're saying is you just shouldn't be able to walk in and you have to sit and talk to people.
Right. You can't just come in and impose your will.
Yeah. You can't do that. So I've been conflicted this whole thing. I wanted us to find the solution. I didn't want to have the vote. The vote itself, to me was more about the city kind of sticking up for itself. So I was proud with the result because people stood up for the city. But at the same time, the vote didn't get me to where it was that we ultimately wanted to be. There was no good vote in that. I didn't like either of the votes in that, other than I voted to defend my city. Then it goes to the state legislature. State legislature preempts us. It's kind of what you expected to have happen.
Yeah.
And now they're back, and I'll still. And with that, comes innovations and new technologies, and that's what Austin's always about. I'm real. I'm proud of the companies that stepped forward to kind of fill that vacuum, and I think the city as a whole, it needs to be real appreciative that as a community we stepped into an area that in other cities no one steps into that vacuum. Right. But in our city we were able to do that. That made me proud of who we were as a city. But to me, so much of that's in my kind of like my rear view mirror at this point.
Okay.
We have mobility issues in the city. Yeah. We need everybody focused on those. That's everybody focused on those kinds of issues. Old companies, new companies, old new companies. Everybody in the city needs to be there. The whole rideshare thing just is unfortunate that we lost a year and a half.
Right. Yeah. Of progress in that area.
Yeah, because I think that if I had had 3 more weeks a year and a half ago, I would have been able to avoid the whole thing. But
short follow-up on this topic. Google and others and Uber and what have you are looking to do like automation for cars, right? Self-driving and that kind of taxi service. Has there been talk with them between City of Austin and Google? I know they have some of the cars you're testing at least at one point. Is there anything happening with that in the now or in the immediate future?
Well, yeah, they've been here testing, continue to be here testing. And that the very first real, truly independent automated ride took place in Austin.
None of that.
Very, very first one. Blind gentleman from California was flown in. He was put into one of the Google, now Waymo, cars. Not on a closed track, not with a police escort. Just get in the car, you're by yourself, go.
Wow.
First time that happened in the world. It was October of 15.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of makes Austin, Texas, the Kitty Hawk of autonomous vehicles. Yes, you can repeat that.
We expected that in 2000. So I want to switch gears before we get to Trump because I don't know, might not have much time left.
Okay.
We asked people to submit questions to ask you, so I want Byron to take that over, and then we'll get to Trump for a little bit on the lighter side of things.
Right?
Yeah. To lighten things up.
Okay.
So we've got some questions from people on Facebook and Instagram. So thanks to everyone for submitting your questions. The first one is from Not Mary Smith from Instagram. It's a pretty easy question. Besides being a cool mayor, what do you like to do in your free time?
They buttered you up at first, huh?
What free time?
Not watch TV.
Yeah, right?
I don't get a lot of free time. Diane and I, when we escape, we'll sometimes go walk down and watch an indie movie. Kind of a way to escape. I have a little sailboat on Lake Travis that I used to use a lot, and I don't now. But kind of my heart's still out there because I just love being on the water but a lot of it, when I get free time now, I have 3 girls, and your time just gets so eaten up in this job that every chance I get to be able to spend time with them. I have two that now live in New York and one that lives in Portland. So sometimes we'll kind of duck out to see them. I have such limited time in this job. It is a gift, but it is a finite period of time. So you want to use every moment of that time as best you can to do justice to this. So not a lot of free time left.
Double thanks to Mayor Adler for taking that free time and being on a podcast today. So just want to do that again.
This is work. What are you talking about?
It's fun.
Go ahead.
Next question is from a good friend of ours, DJ K. Callie on Instagram. She wants to know, what are your top 5 favorite songs? May not have to be top 5, but any favorite songs that you
wake up in the morning and you have to hear this song to put you in a good mood at 6 a.m. before going to a meeting.
The truth is that when I get up in the morning and I start singing songs in the shower, I will invariably go back to the songs I grew up with my dad. My dad actually, when he got out of the Navy, went to L.A. and wrote lyrics for Sam Cooke.
Ooh,
wow! But I will probably just work through, a Nat King Cole album.
Oh, nice.
You haven't heard the new Jay-Z album, have you?
No, but when I gave the commencement address at HT, I quoted Jay-Z.
Oh.
Much to the appreciation
they loved it.
of the crowd.
Very apropos too, with Jay-Z coming and headlining at ACL this year.
Yeah.
All right, next up.
Next question's from Timothy Abbott on Facebook. Is there any talk about tax breaks for musicians who are homeowners?
You have to count that idea among those ideas that the state legislature doesn't give cities the ability to be able to do.
Oh, so that's a state issue that they just said
state
no?
issue. We just can't give exemptions from taxes or target taxes the way that other cities can do. Now, that said, we have to be creative about what we do, and there may be ways for us to use the optional voluntary incentive program that exists to drive a similar result. But the last thing I would do would be to discuss that on a podcast as the special session is beginning. For fear that
I'm like,
anything
what did
I
he say? Let's target that.
Let's target that.
Let's just isolate that clip right there.
Yeah, we got you on tape. Okay, next question's from Mark Kendrick. This was touched on a little bit earlier, but he wants to know, people seem to hate traffic and the same time hate condos that are going up. How can we educate Austinites on the benefits of density?
That's a good question.
Well, density gives us 2 benefits right off the bat. Density. Now, remember, density, when people use the word density, I'm never really sure if what's in their mind, what they're seeing or hearing when we use that word. I'll give you an example. If I take a house in the middle of a neighborhood that looks like all the other houses in the neighborhood, and I let someone tear it down and build something that's twice as big, that's a change in density, right? Mm-hmm. I don't support that in the middle of neighborhoods. Okay. On the other hand, if I take that same house and I let somebody cut it into 2 homes, in other words, duplex that existing structure, when you drive down the street, it looks exactly the same in the neighborhood. But now you have a unit that each of those 2 units will sell for less than what the single family unit sells for on either side. Mm-hmm. So I now have created 2 opportunities where there was just 1 opportunity, and I've created an opportunity that costs less than what that house would have cost by itself. I support that kind of density.
Okay.
Because it's increasing the number of units. And I especially support that at the perimeters, not in the middle of neighborhoods, but along corridors and in transition zones. So one thing that you get from density is an increase in supply. If we could have supply of housing in the city that rose up to meet demand, then we wouldn't have the price increases that we're seeing, because there's a relationship between lack of supply as it relates to demand and prices that are going up. If you have 40 people bidding on a house, the price is going to go up higher. The other thing that density gives us, like in a condo structure, is that's where the city earns its ad valorem tax revenue, its property tax revenue. So if I'm living in Northeast Austin or Southeast Austin or anywhere in the city, and I want a pocket park in my neighborhood, I want the city to come in and invest and build a pocket park in my neighborhood because we don't have enough parks in the neighborhood. Where does that money come from? If you want a pocket park in your neighborhood or a clinic in your neighborhood, what you should be rooting to happen is another condo building to be built downtown, because that's where the revenue comes from to be able to pay for those things. So, there are challenges that come with that density and with the condo building. It's not all perfectly good, right? So we have to deal with those too. But your question was, what are the benefits of that? Right. And the two
educate people.
Educate people. Those two things right off the mind. It helps with supply, which will bring down, is one of the factors we need to look at to bring down price. And the second is that's the economic engines for being able to do the things in communities, neighborhoods that we want to be able to do.
Good answer.
All right. Got one more here. It's from Paul O'Brien. Is driving affordability really the solution? And if so, how can government policy in a capitalist economy force affordability? People will continue to move to Austin, developers will continue to build, and appealing parts of town are always, unless the economy collapses, appreciate in value.
That's very true. But I still think that there are things that the government can do. There are two ways you make things more affordable. You make things cost less, or you help people get more money to be able to spend. And we need as a city to be working on both of those. So in an area where I have prices that are going up and people can build, you're right. The question being asked is absolutely right. Prices are going to go up as more and more people want to live there. But if I say to somebody, the highest you can build is 2 stories, that's all you can build. But I'll tell you what, I will let you build a 3rd story in this particular location because it fits. But because it's optional, I can't force you to put in 1 or 2 affordable units. But I can say to you, you have no right to go a 3rd story. But if you want to go a 3rd story, then you have to put in a couple affordable units in that. Now, the property owner can decide whether to do it or not. We're not forcing anything on them. But if they want to get the extra income from having a 3rd floor, then that's the obligation. So there are ways for us as a city to be able to build in affordability and mixed income opportunities. We're going to have a bond election probably in November of 2018, where we will hold an election and ask for people to help with a bond for affordable housing in the city. That's the second way you do that. The other way that you deal with affordability, other than making things cost less, is you help people get more money to spend. So we need to get a lot more focused on job training in the city. We create more middle skill jobs than any city in the country does. Austin, Texas. The problem we have in Austin is we don't have people in the city that are skilled to take those jobs. This doesn't require a college education. These are jobs that require, a 2-year degree from the community college or even a certificate, or in some cases just some classes. Yep. But we have 40,000 people looking for work, and we have 40,000 of those jobs, and they don't match up with each other. So we end up having to hire people from outside the city to come in and take these.
They're taking our jobs.
But wouldn't it be better if we trained the people who live here to be able to take those jobs? So we can do those kinds of things, and that also helps with affordability.
There was one last question from our good friend Rebecca Reynolds about to go back to the Asian of Change. And are you optimistic about neighborhoods and hotels and music community working together to build Asian of Change policy that serve each of them?
Yes, I'm absolutely. I absolutely believe that we're going to be able to work that out. In fact, the recent lawsuit that was filed looks like it was just settled, with the Nook in the hotel.
It's settled?
I've heard that.
Oh. We'll double check.
Yeah. double check.
Just a little background for everyone watching. It's between the Nook and I think it was Westin. Right?
Yeah,
there was a conflict of noise.
Conflict of noise?
And they sued them for $1 million, and they moved like a block away from Nook. And Asian Change is not in effect right now, so
But I think that some of the principles that we're trying to put into the agent of change may have helped guide and direct the resolution of that action. The pilot that we're doing right now on Sound and Noise, that pilot with the clubs that are there at on Red River and 9th, as we're involving the neighborhoods in that, all the way up to Hyde Park. And we're looking at some preliminary results from that make it look like we may actually begin to get a handle on the noise, as well as increasing the revenue that those clubs are earning, so that they can pay bands more. The support staff gets an extra hour or so to be able to earn income. So I have high hopes for that. The people who live here love the city, and this is not a case that we have a city with good guys and bad guys. I mean, we have bunches of really good guys that love the city, that appreciate wherever they are. They appreciate it, that it is the spirit and soul of the city. That is one of the reasons that they're here. Everybody wants to protect that. Now, granted, people have different ideas of how you do that. Right. But when you take people generally of goodwill and with the same, and put them in a room and say, okay, look, we have to solve for this. We all need the same thing at the end of the day. Let's solve for this. My experience in Austin is that this is a community that can rise above that and actually find real answers.
Well, I think that to follow up on Rebecca's question, that model of bringing everybody to the table and coming up with a solution is something that we need to see more. When I was going through the omnibus, all this, the city hall, not city hall, the town hall meeting, sorry, I saw a lot of artists in the room. Most of them were in their 50s, and then nonprofits, people who were involved. I'm like, where are the college kids? Where are the young artists who just want to be part of this conversation? Where are the companies, the tech companies who are here? Where is music technology? So it feels like we said earlier, don't rely on the city, but work with the city to solve problems, but at least collaborate outside of the city and come up with a solution and be like, okay, here's our proposal, here's what we think, here's how we can help you solve this problem. We're all fighting the same fight, all together. So that the whole idea of collaboration, I think it's what's going to help us, bring us out and solve all these problems that we've been talking about.
I love that. And you or others help set up those meetings, and me or my staff will come.
Sweet. All right. On a lighter note, let's talk about Trump. I know you're a big fan.
So there's all the cities have some sort of relationship with the federal government, and we're just interested in what Austin's relationship so far, at least with the new administration and things have been going on everywhere from sanctuary cities is more of a state thing, but it's also has a national implication as well. Climate change and the things that cities are doing and taking the lead since the federal government pulled out of that, and just anything else that there's where as a city, just interested in your take where the city is deciding to take a more lead role because maybe the federal government is not, a relationship there is not there anymore. You have to take more of a role. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah. A lot of things may have changed back in that election, back in November. But one thing that did not change was Austin, Texas. I mean, we are who we were before that vote. We are who we are immediately after that vote. So take climate change, for example. So the federal government pulls out of the climate change treaty. I think it's really unfortunate because I don't think there's a question about the risks that we face from climate change. It's not really debatable. So that was a bad thing to do. But, I was in Paris when the climate change accords were signed. I was representing the city because at the same time that international meeting was taking place, of federal governments, of national governments, that was the single largest collection of mayors in one place in the history of the world.
Wow.
And Austin, Texas was part of that.
Trump made it happen. Isn't that great?
This is a year or two before Trump. It was back in Paris. But there were, it was incredible being there. Over half of the change that the climate change accord calls for doesn't happen at the national level. It happens at the city and the municipal and the local level. So I signed an agreement while I was there, along with 1,000 other mayors, pledging our cities to do our part in order to achieve those goals. And Austin has always led the way in that. I mean, this is a city that's going to be carbon net zero by 2050, municipal operations net zero by 2020. We're about to pass a resolution in August that'll get us to 65-75% renewable energy in our generation plan by 2027. This is a city that is out front in so many of those things, and we're going to continue to do that regardless of what the federal government does, because in Austin, we still get to make choices about how we live and what our priorities are. And again, Austin didn't change in that election. Austin has stayed the same. On the sanctuary city issue, that was precipitated here recently because of action that the Travis County Sheriff took, and the suggestion at the time is that she was violating federal law in order to put criminals out on the street. And there are so many things wrong with that suggestion, beginning with the fact that she wasn't violating any federal law or any state law. But for the longest period of time, people thought that she was. I went to Washington. I met with the Attorney General, with Attorney General Sessions. This is after the president issued his executive order. And I sat and I said, is a city doing what we're doing? Is a county doing what? Are we violating any federal laws? He said, no. I said, are we subject, given what we're doing here in Travis County, are we risking losing any federal funding? He said, no. And in fact, that's consistent with the filings that they've made in court. There's no suggestion that Travis County or Austin is violating any law or that we're subject to loss of any federal funds. Now, here's the problem, right? So at the state level, they're pushing forward on this on the mean that we're violating law. Of course, we're not violating any law. So in order to make the facts fit the rhetoric, they have to pass a law that we would then be breaking. So now they'll create the law that will make what we're doing against the law. The second part of that meme is just as damaging, letting criminals out on the street that are going to hurt us. I mean, the truth is that immigrant populations have a lower incidence of crime and criminal activity than do the general population. Undocumented immigrants have a lower rate of criminal issues than the general population.
That's not smart.
I think that's part of it. I mean, I think that's part of it. I mean, these are people that recognize that if they do something, then their position here is significantly jeopardized. But when you so it's not a question of putting criminals back on the street. The people, if there's a criminal being put back on the street, if someone gets arrested and is being put back on the street, it's because the charges against them were dropped. They were found innocent. Or the judge has said, if you pay this bail, you're entitled to go back out on the street. That's how the system works. It's the judge setting the conditions of who should go back out on the streets or not. Whether they're undocumented or documented, they're entitled to the same kind of bail hearings. But yet, when this kind of activity occurs in our city, it makes us less safe. It destroys the trust relationship that could exist between our local law enforcement and our communities. Suddenly you have women who are victims of sexual assault who are not turning in the person that attacked them because they're afraid of going to the police. Which means that you now have somebody who attacked someone who knows that they're not going to get turned in. You know what happens when that happens? When someone can do something and they say, well, nothing's going to happen to me because you're more scared of turning them in than you are than going to the police than you are scared of me. That makes communities less safe. Our Rape Crisis Center here in the city said there has been an 80% drop in the number of women that go into the Rape Crisis Center for treatment and help. 80% drop in the number of them that are willing to file a charge with the police department. We have children and families that are not showing up at clinics to get inoculations and other health support that families should be getting because they're afraid to go. That makes our city less safe. So it is more than just a state issue, even though that Senate Bill 4 is trying to now go way beyond federal law and make something illegal here in Texas that is not violating federal law.
Right.
And that Senate Bill 4 that we're in court on now not only does that, it not only goes beyond federal law to make something illegal that is currently not legal but just voluntary, it also has a provision that says that I, as mayor of this city, that the Attorney General and the governor can remove me from office if I endorse a policy that is different than Senate Bill 4.
Wow, that's
Can you imagine that?
I mean,
that just means endorsing a policy that's different. They can go into court and remove me from office.
So, are you endorsing it?
Absolutely, I'm endorsing a policy different than Senate Bill 4.
Yes.
Let's go.
And that's why we're in court, because you can't pass a law that says to an elected official what he can endorse and not endorse.
I don't think they know they're dealing with a lawyer in the first place.
On a lighter note, as we start to wrap things up, it's not on the agenda, but it came up recently. There was someone who wrote in on the internet and about the Alamo Drafthouse showing a certain movie to just women, and we had a elected official we just happened to have in the room that responded to that, and that letter that you wrote, that response that you wrote, went viral across the world. Did you expect that to happen? I'm sure you didn't. And you know what? I've never seen you write like a response to something like that. What made you write that response and even get involved? And is that something you may look to do in the future for issues that you feel are important to you that you want to speak about?
It's interesting. That week, I wrote a really good piece on climate change.
No.
Which nobody read.
No, nobody knows about that.
I wrote a really good piece on sanctuary cities that nobody
that's
read.
where we live in. We want things to go viral.
But I'm the Wonder Woman mayor now, which was cool. I have 3 girls, and that I get emails all the time from people, as you might imagine, and I usually don't do that, but this one struck a chord.
Right.
In part, I have 3 girls, and it was just, it came in at the right time at the right moment. We started, drafting something to respond to it. It picked up speed, steam here, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. But no, we never expected it to go viral, and
it was so on point.
It was so fun. But being mayor became really relevant to my 3 girls because it got published in BuzzFeed.
Yeah.
And as soon as I made BuzzFeed, then my girls
then
said,
they heard about it.
Now I understand this job.
BuzzFeed.
Now you're
You
relevant.
actually read something that you wrote.
HuffPost.
Right.
You made CNN. You made so
Right.
many websites. So I want to go back to. Have you met Trump?
I have not.
You have not. If he was here, what would you tell him?
I'm not sure, because I'm not sure that anything I could say to him would have an impact. I guess what I would say to him is that I am from a city that is an economic engine and an innovator. There is something we're doing in this city culturally that may not fit for all cities or all places, but we have so much we can offer and bring to the table in this country. And we want desperately to help make our state and our country stronger. And the way for us to be able to do that is to let us be who are we as a neighborhood, what we want to be. That's what I would say to him. Do I think it would impact anything that's happening?
Fake news. That there was an article in the New York Times recently about the Trump kids trying to open looking at Austin to build a hotel. Like, what are your thoughts on that? If I from a government standpoint, I think we have to be neutral, right,
to everybody coming into our city wanting to set up a business. So if the Trump family came in to set up a business, I would hope that the city would treat them the same way that we would treat anybody else coming in the city setting up a business. Individually, when I make my own personal choices about where I go,
express yourself. This is what a podcast is for.
Everybody gets to make their own individual choices and decisions. But as a city, we need to be neutral.
Yeah.
Right. I want to play a quick game, and then we're gonna wrap things up. Of who said it, Trump or Mr. Burns? There's actually
Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. And there's actually a website called Trump or MrBurns.com where you can answer questions. Number 1, You know what uranium is, right? I can't do a good Trump. But anyway, or Mr. Burns. This thing called nuclear weapons, like a lot of things, are done in uranium, including some bad things. Who said that? Trump or Burns?
Trump.
Yep.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yep.
ding. I'll do the next one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even if waterboarding doesn't work, they deserve it anyway.
Mr. Burns.
Trump. Byron, you want to take the next one?
Why do I need another penny? I have billions. Still, if I don't take it, that hoodlum over there might.
Trump.
Mr. Burns, actually.
Lane, take one.
Next one. Part of the beauty of me is that I am very rich.
Mr. Burns or Mr. Trump?
It's tough, isn't it?
Part of the
cartoon
beauty of
for
me
president.
is that I'm rich. Mr. Trump.
Ding, ding,
Yes.
ding,
Yep.
ding, ding.
Tiny children are not horses. One vaccine at a time, over time. Trump or Mr. Burns?
Mr. Burns.
Trump.
Trump. Last
All right,
one.
last one.
Anyone can start a family. These days, no one can find a job, is the problem. Anyone can start a family. These days, no one
Mr. Burns.
wants to find a job. Mr. Burns it is. All right.
Congratulations.
It's a hard game.
Yeah, it is. Go to trumpormrburns.com. You can play along. It's a lot of fun, actually. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised what our president says.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap things up. We've been talking for an hour and a half. I know we take a lot of your time already.
It's fun. Thank you.
Do you listen to podcasts at all on your free time, quote unquote? No, but thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here in the at City Hall. It was Lane's first time. She's so excited. But we look forward to keeping up with what's happening, and like as you know, we what we do at the FeedBak is we try to capture the story of Austin and try to export that, and people listen from all over the country. And we love what we do. We love our city just as much as you do, maybe more. Nah, I'm kidding. But thank you so much. Thank you to our sponsors, Slab Barbecue and Herd Presents. You can follow the FeedBak on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. It really helps. It goes a long way. You can also go to thefeedbak.com/donate if you want to help us with our whole equipment here that we have and the services we use online to bring a quality show to you. Thank you, Miko. Thank you, Byron. Thank you, Lane. And thank you, Steve. It's just weird. Thank you, Mayor Adler.
Absolutely.
Wonder Woman Mayor, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Y'all
We'll
take
talk
care.
to you next time. And ciao, ciao.